Welcome to Ridgecrest Talk. I'm your host, Tonia Pyle, and I've been thinking about many issues, retirement questions, and so my mind goes to Andy Barkate, who I've been very informed by many of your articles in the Daily Independent and otherwise. So I want to thank you so much for joining me today. You've been in retirement for 30 years. You don't look like you've been retired for 30 years.
Not even close. I'll be working for a long time. I just talk to people every day about retirement, retirement planning.
All right. All right, sounds good. So, so I wanted to ask you about when you plan for your retirement, if you're worried about the dollar, where the dollar's going, because I've been seeing a lot of things come across my desk about the value of the dollar and where it's going. So I'll just kind of lay out where my mind has been going with concerns. One, I've been concerned about the value of the dollar. I've been concerned hearing about other states using other means of exchange other than the dollar. How does that work? And I've been interested in talk about a Senator Harkin planning a national 401k. So
he's very much in the limelight.
So what would you, where would you go?
Well, let's see. What do we want to talk about first? That's a lot to talk about, and let's talk a little bit about retirement planning in the dollar, I guess, just to kind of touch base on that. The dollar is affected by many things, and it affects many things. You know, if you think of there's a lot of talk out there about the value of the dollar being drastically devalued, hurt a lot if we lose our reserve currency, and that hasn't happened yet. Actually, the value of the dollar in most cases is strong. The dollar is, you have to understand the value of the dollar is relative. When you look at a dollar, it's always based, the dollar as it's based against another currency. The value of the dollar against the yen, against the euro, against the Canadian dollar, the peso. It's always relative. So if you think about the dollar as a commodity, any commodity is going to go up and down based on supply and demand. That's why a stock falls and rises. What makes more people want to buy that stock versus sell that stock is going to change that supply-demand equation. It's going to make it go up or go down. The dollar is no different. If more people want dollars, the value of the dollar is going to go up, and more people don't want dollars for whatever reason that is, or too much supply is created, which is what people worry about, then that dollar might get hurt. The dollar is used is kind of been the standard for most transactions around the world. If you're going to buy any commodities.
And that's a significant thing that has to do with this change of it being the world reserve currency, because people don't realize that other countries haven't enjoyed that with their form of exchange. They haven't, their currency, the yen, hasn't been the global reserve currency.
That's true. And in
Ours
a
has.
lot of cases, that's because our currency is much more stable. People trust, well, I guess trust is a relative thing also, but more people trust what we're doing economically in our political system and our economic system more than others around the world. What currency, if people think that our currency is going to get replaced as a reserve currency, the question I would ask them is what's going to take its place? What currency, what country, what economic system would you think is trusted more than the U.S.? Not that we don't have our fleas. We're doing a lot of things I think are probably wrong economically, but again, that's a relative term. Just because we're not doing things right doesn't mean we're still, you know, the least dirty shirt. We are the the best of a rotten bunch, so to speak. And again, it's a lot of that's got to do with relativity. In most big transactions that happen around the world, oil is traded in dollars. Most commodities that are traded between countries are traded in dollars. So unless that changes, and there's always talk of that, but there's been talk of that for years, and there's nothing really that I've seen on the horizon that says that's going to happen. Doesn't mean we won't have problems with the dollar. Doesn't mean that some of the economic things that we're practicing, the economic policies we're practicing, aren't going to come back and bite us. So they typically do.
Okay, so it's not changing how people are planning their retirement.
Well, that's a whole different issue.
Okay.
I mean, the dollar going up and down can have effects on interest rates. It can have effects on inflation, which in turn can have effects on stock prices. But planning for retirement is a complete different microcosm. When you're planning for your retirement, by and large, you're planning to replace your income. You know, everybody goes to work every day to make an income, so they've got that nice steady stream of income so they can pay their bills and live their lifestyle. Well, when you retire, That doesn't change. You still want to have that nice, steady stream of income. So a retirement plan is kind of synonymous for an income plan or an income replacement plan. You're not working anymore, hence something else has got to replace those dollars or that cash flow coming in. And retirement planning is about putting that all together. When you look at investing your money, which is part of retirement planning,
Right.
that portion of retirement planning, which is actually a pretty big portion, can be affected by the dollar. Or, again, certain things about your investments could also affect the dollar. If the dollar is falling in value, rising in value, the dollar is rising in value, that means foreigners that are, well, if we are buying goods from a foreign country, if we're buying automobiles, other maybe consumer products from other countries to sell here, well, those other countries have got to sell it to us at a higher price, hence it makes it inflationary because of the exchange differences. So we may pay more for a car that came from Germany or Japan because the value of the dollar changed. So that's inflationary here, which in turn could harm the economy, hence harm the stock market. And if you've got stock market type investments in your retirement plans, they could be harmed. So there's not too many people have a true direct effect of the dollar going up and down in their retirement plans or maybe in their investment plans in general. But the effects the dollar has on other things could also have that ancillary effect on stock prices or bond prices or interest rates, which can affect the value of a retirement plan.
We're getting ready to take a break here,
Okay.
but we'll come back and talk about a little bit about the National 401k that's been discussed as a bill, and maybe you can elaborate on that for us. And then I want to talk a little bit about other forms of exchange other than the dollar, and that is going on, I think, in other states.
Legal exchange, I hope.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll be right back
All right.
after that. Thank you. Welcome back to Ridgecrest Talk with Andy Barkate. So, Andy, you were familiar with the talk of a national 401k. How can you?
I've read a few things about it, and this comes back from probably back a couple of years ago, 2011, 2012, when the idea was kind of floated about maybe having some kind of a national 401k. Now, it's to my knowledge, it's never gotten as far as being in a bill. Now, just because it gets in a bill doesn't mean it's going to happen. It just means it's taking that next step. But the idea has been floated, and I think it's been met with a resounding thumbs down about the government somehow creating a national retirement system. Now, the positive side for this, or I guess the fodder that the opponents have, or the proponents, I should say, for a national 401k, is that most people aren't prepared to retire. Not even close. The average person is extremely far behind the curve when it comes to saving enough money for retirement, and I think most people are trying to rely or planning or will be forced to rely on Social Security, and that's just not going to be enough. So it's a big crisis out there. We all know it. This is nothing new. It's been brewing for 20 years. It's been anything but hidden. It's been very obvious and been talked about for years. But still, nothing's really changed.
The national 401k?
No, the fact that we're behind on retirement
planning
saving.
for retirement.
Right. The government has done many things to try to encourage people to plan for retirement. The tax deductions and the tax breaks you might get when you're saving for retirement. They grow tax deferred, I should say. Different Roth accounts, can actually pay out tax-free income. So there's a lot of ways the government's tried to encourage retirement savings. And it's worked to a certain degree, but for a larger part of the population, which is typically the lower income part of the population, hadn't worked well at all. And that's what they're trying, that's the sales job they're trying to use to push the national 401k.
Okay.
That will force individuals and companies to put in 401ks, to put in retirement plans and fund them. And the details are a little bit sketchy. The ones I've read kind of make it out to be a kind of a combination between employer-funded and employee-funded. And again, it's one of these things where the definition has been very light, so you don't know too much about the details. And there's been a lot of other rumors that have gone around about the government maybe wanting to confiscate your 401k or confiscate your IRA. And again, that's never been in bill form, but it has been talked about or mentioned. I'm not sure if it's actually been mentioned by elected politicians.
For what reason? Pay down the national debt? Or
Well, that could be, that's always the ancillary, that's the fear that everybody thinks about. You know, Washington needs to get their hands on the money because retirement plans, I want to say there's something
Money
like 20 some $trillion in retirement plans. That's just too big of a chunk of money for the government to ignore. If they can get their hands on it, look at all the things they could do with it, like spend it. They're very good at that, we know. To my knowledge, there's been a few academics that have worked in different government positions, not elected officials. I don't think they've done anything in an official capacity other than make comments or maybe write papers about what might happen or what positives could happen if you instituted some kind of a 401k where the government would somehow get their hands on your 401k in exchange for an income from the government. Or you'd be allowed to invest in your 401k and buy certain types of government securities with it.
And I don't want to change the subject, but I'm just thinking the reverse mortgage was a way for the government to sort of help people who were elderly, but it helped them get their hands on your home.
Well,
right?
The government didn't get their hands on the home. The bank that financed the government or the reverse mortgage got their homes. The government just backed it, just like they would back a loan, like an FHA loan. They'd back that loan. But again, the government did put into works about a year ago something they called the MIRA. It's like a My IRA, but they're kind of short for MIRA. And it's kind of a government-sponsored IRA plan that employers are supposed to actually use. That they don't have to use it, but again, they can use it. Individuals can use it. And it was put into law, and to my knowledge, I've never seen anybody set one up. So it was one of those things they put out there, and it just kind of flopped. Its only advantage I saw was its minimums. Minimum investments were very small. I think about $25. So they're very small.
I was going to say, I thought it was $25.
But other than that, it looked and smelled just like a Roth IRA, which has been out there for years. So,
it caught my attention.
but then again, a lot of Roth IRAs, there's a lot of mutual funds that you can buy and use as a Roth IRA that have very low minimums also, which are probably just as low as $25. So did we have, was a MIRA a solution looking for a problem? We already have something. When I read the information on the MIRA, you could have substituted MIRA for Roth IRA and it would have read the same way. So I think a lot of work was put into something that probably wasn't necessary because we had something already out there in the marketplace that was working that met that requirement. Just because you put something out there doesn't mean people are going to use it. The 401k has been out there for years. And there's no restrictions on people using it. Now, if your company's got a 401k, as long as you meet the requirements of the 401k, which is usually working for the company for a few months or maybe a year, you can be in the 401k. Still, a large percentage of the population that has a 401k available to them choose not to use it. So you can lead a horse to water, but you know the rest.
Is there a way for a person to find out if they have money somewhere in a 401k with a company somewhere?
I would hope they would know it.
You would hope.
You would hope they would know it. It's been money coming out of your paycheck for all those years.
But, you know, there are changes. People go through changes. Some people work at one place for 30 years, but not everyone does.
There's a lot of laws and rules that go along with that. If you, say, have a small 401k, and I would think it'd be a small 401k you would lose track of. You'd never want to lose track of a big 401k. You'd remember it. Say if you moved, maybe changed your name, got divorced, changed names, those kind of things, and you just kind of lost track of it. The company that has that money has to make efforts to find you. They just can't. They don't keep. It's your money. They can't keep it. Under no circumstances do they get to keep the money.
Okay, we're getting ready to take a break. So finish that thought, and then we'll take a quick break and come back.
They have to try to find you. In this day and age with the internet, it's a lot easier to find people that have somehow just left the state, changed addresses. In a worst case, what they will do is take that 401k money and roll it over to an IRA in your name, in your Social Security number. So eventually, if you start looking around, you'll find it. So, but again, you won't lose the money. You just have to go back, find the money that you somehow lost track of. Okay.
Well, when we come back, I want to talk about. I want to finish that thought on how you find that with your Social Security. And we'll be right back.
Got it.
Thanks. Welcome back to Ridgecrest Talk with Andy Barkate, talking retirement. So Andy, you sort of gave us your input on the National 401k. And now, what about someone then who doesn't see much hope in saving a lot for retirement? What can someone do who's getting a late start?
Well, it can be daunting. I mean, it really can. Planning for retirement's not easy. It doesn't happen by accident. And the later you start, the more difficult it gets. So it's easy for somebody who's for one reason or another hasn't done a lot of planning to look at what's ahead of them and just think this is impossible, so just forget it. It's just something that looks too big. We run into this situation quite often. All we do all day is talk to people that are working on retirement plans, or we help them set them up, one of the two. And often people come in and says, I'm a certain age, 45, 50 years old, I don't have much of a plan. I hear that all the time. There's a lot of things you can do. You may actually have more of a plan, you may have more things going for you than you realize. As again I mentioned on one of our earlier segments, retirement planning is about income planning. Creating that income that you're going to have when your paycheck stops coming in. And the first thing to actually consider is how much money you need. How much money you need every month to pay your bills. And that's an easy question to ask, but it's not an easy question to answer. And you want as much as you can to reduce expenses, to reduce debt. Every dollar of debt that you don't have is a dollar that you can now spend any way you want. So one thing to work on for people that are kind of late in life and getting a late start is work on alleviating your debt, paying your cards down, paying houses off, second mortgages, cars, pay all that down so your paycheck is not spoken for before you get it. So then you can come down to how much money you actually need to fund your lifestyle. And that's our brass ring right there. That's our target. And then we look at ways that the income that you're going to need to fund those expenses. And one of the things is Social Security. And that's a very fundamental part of retirement planning, is understanding how much Social Security you're going to get, and then understanding the best way to take it. And there's a whole bunch of ways to take it. It's more complicated than you think. So Social Security will probably make up a portion of what you need as far as your income. So we need to find out what that gap is. If Social Security is going to give you $2,000 a month, but you need $4,000, well, we need $2,000 more a month, and where are we going to get it? So now we've got a smaller problem to solve for. We need $2,000 a month. And we can work on going about trying to find different ways to help you invest your money in different things to hopefully have that money grow over a period of time and supply that additional income. Those 401ks you were talking about a minute ago. If you work at a company that has a 401k, get in it. If it's being matched, make sure you're getting that match. If you work for the government, they've got a great TSP plan. They have a nice match out there too, so by all means get in those plans so you're saving those dollars.
TSP plan?
Thrift Savings Plan. Sorry,
Thank you.
Everybody in the government around here knows exactly what that is.
Okay.
That's a very strong and very well thought out savings plan. It is. It's partially, depending on what type of retirement system you are through or under with the government, if you're in one of the older retirement systems, you don't get a match. If you're in the new retirement system, the FERS retirement system, which most people out here are, they get part of that retirement match, part of their contribution to thrift savings match. Those dollars can go to be a pretty large chunk of money, which some of those dollars can be used to create different income streams. We do this all the time. And that income stream is what helps fund that gap in retirement that maybe your Social Security or pension leave. Your Social Security and pension may not be quite enough to get you the income you want to live the lifestyle you want to be able to live. So that gap is what we're trying to fill. In a lot of cases, you can use your retirement accounts to fill those gaps, but you have to actually use the retirement accounts first. So if you're starting late, if you're starting as late as 50, maybe even later, there's still time to actually work on that debt to reduce your expenses and hopefully start saving money in those retirement plans. So maybe over 10 or 15 years, you can save enough money to give you that money you're going to need.
Well, you work with people's Social Security then, and bringing that into into their retirement plan. Is there a time when you are required to take your Social Security, or
Well,
can you?
you have to take it. Well, I guess the easiest way to answer that, Tonia, is the latest you can take Social Security is age 70.
Oh, okay.
The earliest you can take it is 62.
Okay.
But you get a smaller payment. Full retirement is usually around 66 years old for Social Security recipients.
Okay.
If you take it earlier, you get less. If you take it later, you get more. So we're always looking at when individuals need income, when they want to retire, where other income sources might come from, and then that gives us an idea, do we need to take Social Security now, or can we put it off later and get more? It's all about trying to look at what somebody's got and try to put that puzzle together the best way possible to get them the most out of what they've got to work with. So we can't pull rabbits out of hats, but we want to use all these different techniques and these tools that are out there to take somebody's financial situation and just make it a little bit better.
Okay.
And Social Security is definitely one of those things.
Okay, so we've got just a couple minutes left. So, well, what haven't I asked that you would like to share with people about?
Oh gosh, I
retirement
could go on
plans?
and on forever. Let's see. Oh, it's something that I should probably make people aware of out there.
Okay.
Probably a lot of your listeners out there are either getting Social Security or they're going to probably get Social Security one of these days. Most everybody's going to get it.
Okay.
Actually, I mentioned earlier about the National 401k it's been something talked about, but it's never made it to a bill. Well, there's some Social Security changes that are actually in the 2016 budget that, unless they're changed, they're going to take effect next May, 6-7 months from now.
In the national budget?
And in the proposed budget now that's, I think, in front of Congress.
Okay.
There's some changes made to spousal benefits, how spousal benefits work, and it makes them less appealing. There's also something called file and switch, where one spouse can turn their Social Security on, another spouse can actually start taking theirs, and the other spouse turns it back off and lets it grow. They're starting to change how those things work. Those
Okay.
were always different strategies we could use to help individuals get more from Social Security. Well, they're starting to take those back. So again, I think the government's trying to find different ways they can actually, they can tax us more, which is pretty obvious and nobody likes it, or they can change other ways to either cut their own spending down or create revenue into different areas. And changing the way Social Security works and changing how much money it pays out just leaves more money in Social Security and perhaps more money available to the government to spend in other ways.
I wonder how people can, do people need to go online and learn about that?
They should.
Okay.
They should go online, learn about it. It may not affect them, depending how they're set up, but it could easily affect them. And again, it's something that it's one of these things just kind of hidden out there that's stuck
Right.
in the millions of line items in a budget that will affect a lot of people. It won't
Okay.
affect everybody, but it'll affect a lot of people. So again, learn about it.
Particularly the people going into retirement.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And then if you don't like what you hear or what you read, and you probably won't, make some phone calls. Write a few
Okay.
letters. Call your congressman. After all, they want us to vote for them, right?
That's
We
right.
might as well get them to do something for us at the same time.
Well, Andy Barkate, it's been so nice talking to you. I want to
Thanks,
thank you
Tonia.
so much for
It's been
joining
my
us.
pleasure.
Thank you.